They always said marriage could survive storms, but nothing prepared me for the night I caught my husband holding my sister-in-law's hand under the table at a family dinner. My name is Amanda Brooks, and in that instant, the life I thought I had shattered. What happened next wasn't just betrayal, it was the unraveling of an entire family. So tell me, if you were me, would you confront them right there, or keep silent and wait for the truth to surface? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. I didn't notice the envelope at first. I noticed how my husband leaned in toward my sister-in-law, their voices lower than the clatter of plates, and how the lamplight made Sarah's smile look practiced. It was supposed to be a simple Sunday dinner at my in-laws in Ohio, Margaret's lasagna steaming on the counter, David reliving a high school prank. I set a casserole down and told myself not to read meaning into posture. New project at work, Mark had told me 3 nights ago, when midnight found him answering texts in the bathroom with the fan on. Big client, meetings are running late. When Sarah laughed, too softly, too fast, and tucked her hair behind her ear, a hinge clicked shut inside my chest. Everyone sat, and the dining room shrank to our breathing and the scrape of chairs. Margaret put out her heirloom plates, the leaf in the table making us stretch to pass the salad bowl. David took the head of the table, cheerful, oblivious. Mark sat to his right. I sat across from him. Sarah ducked into the kitchen for dressing. When she returned, a thin ivory rectangle rode under her folded napkin. It changed hands in plain sight, hidden by chatter. Mark praised the sauce. Sarah offered bread. Their fingers brushed in the trade, a touch so casual it begged not to be noticed. I stared at the iced tea pitcher instead, at the lemon seeds caught in its mouth, at the way my throat tightened around nothing citrus. "How's the clinic schedule?" Margaret asked. "Busy," I said, and felt my attention slide beneath the table. If suspicion has a sound, it's the polite clink of forks. If it has a smell, it's tomato and basil trying to smother nerves. Mark studied his napkin, the grain of the oak. Each time our eyes met, he smiled too wide, then let his gaze drift to Sarah. The corners of her mouth kept betraying her. David launched a story about a car dying on prom night. My laugh arrived late and alone. The envelope disappeared. Into Sarah's purse maybe, or Mark's blazer. "Calm down, Amanda, observe. Don't accuse." Mark nudged his chair half an inch toward Sarah's. The distance thinned. For a breath, the room narrowed to a thread. The line of Mark's wrist, the curve of Sarah's fingers on the tablecloth. The blue ivy ringed around porcelain. "Remember when Dad caught us sneaking out?" David laughed. Mark blamed raccoons. Everyone roared. Mark laughed too, and under the current of conversation his hand slid, not entirely by accident, against Sarah's knee. Heat climbed my face. I pinched my napkin until little moons dented the cloth. I thought of nights waiting up with takeout cooling on the counter, of the date he canceled because the team is crunched, of the way Sarah's perfume, sweet, almost medicinal, had lingered on Mark's t-shirts. I thought of the envelope. "Everything okay?" Margaret asked. "You're quiet." "Long week," I said, and shaped my mouth into a smile. On the surface, steam fogging the window. String lights blinking on the porch. We look like a normal family having a normal Sunday. Under the table, the truth sat between the shoes. Dessert arrived. Pie. She served me a slice too big. Mark passed the whipped cream. Our fingers didn't touch. "Thanks," I said. "Of course," he answered, borrowing the word from an older version of us. On the drive home, the fields shone with frost under the moon. Mark hummed along to the radio and kept his hands at 10 and 2. I could say her name. I could ask about the envelope. Instead, I asked about his mother's back, about David's new job. The ghost of paper rode in the back seat. He fell asleep in minutes. I lay awake listening to the heat kick on, to the fridge cycle, to the house make its small night noises. The glow of his phone pulsed, then stilled, then pulsed again. I didn't reach for it. I had seen enough to know the story had changed. I traced the edge of my pillow and tried to remember the last time I wasn't smoothing the cracks. I want to say I was brave. I want to say I shook him awake and demanded the truth. Instead, I did the only thing I trusted. I watched. I listened to Mark's even breath. And I asked the question that had been threading through my thoughts since dinner. What are they hiding behind my back? The sound was faint at first, a vibration more than a chime. But in the dark, it felt like thunder. Mark's phone lit up beside him on the nightstand, screen pulsing against the shadowed walls of our bedroom. He shifted in the bed, not fully awake, too quick to turn on his side, too steady in his breathing. Pretending. I lay still, heart pacing, as the glow caught the edge of his jaw. Another vibration, then another. I knew the rhythm of his phone, the tempo of his work emails. This was different. Too insistent, too quick. I rolled over, slow enough to keep the mattress from groaning, and let the light fall across my face. Meeting first thing tomorrow, he had said, slipping into bed with his hair damp from a late shower. But meetings don't text after midnight. Lovers do. The name slid onto the screen like a knife. Sarah. Just Sarah. I told myself it could be family, some innocent reminder. My chest argued otherwise. The first message was short, a jumble of letters and dots, a code of sorts. Then another with only an asterisk. Then another, the kind of shorthand you invent with someone you think you'll never get caught with. He let out a heavy sigh, the exaggerated kind people make when they want you to believe they're deep asleep. My hand trembled as I angled the screen. The messages lined up like footprints. And then the one that broke through the denial. Tonight. As planned. My pulse hammered in my ears. Tonight. As planned. I stared at the words, waiting for them to rewrite themselves into something harmless. They didn't. I felt the room tilt, the warmth of the blankets suffocating instead of safe. I pushed the sheets back, my feet cold against the hardwood. He stirred. Everything okay? His voice was thick, groggy, but I caught the thread of performance. Just thirsty, I whispered. I moved toward the kitchen, but I didn't drink. I leaned against the counter, the glow of the microwave clock burning green. 12:47. I thought of the envelope, of Sarah's hair falling forward as she reached across the table, of Mark's laugh, too quick, when our eyes met. The pieces began pressing against each other, not yet fitting, but sharp enough to cut. In the silence, I knew two things. 1, they had a plan that excluded me. 2, if I stayed still, I'd never know the shape of it. I pressed my palms flat against the counter, feeling the tremor in my hands settle into resolve. I padded back to the bedroom, each step careful, deliberate. Mark was exactly as I left him, mouth parted, phone tucked close. His chest rose and fell in rehearsed calm. I slid under the covers and let my eyes close, though sleep was an impossible lie. I had made a choice. Not to accuse, not yet. Not to play the fool either. I would follow. Watch. Catch the shadows they thought invisible. The house breathed around me, and in the dark I repeated it like a vow. I will find out where this road leads. I will not look away. I stay 3 car lengths behind Mark's sedan, far enough to be forgettable, close enough that his taillights are the only red I'm willing to trust. The highway slips out of town into a spill of big-box stores and half-lit billboards, the kind of nowhere that promises cheap rooms and no questions. My phone rests face up in the cup holder, the last message from Sarah still on the screen. Tonight, as planned. It ticks like a metronome in my head. He exits at 17B, Signal flicking twice, steady as if he has rehearsed it. I ease off too, keeping to the right, pretending to be undecided at the light. He turns into a hotel that hugs the interstate, 3 stories, beige stucco, a flickering O in the neon sign, H-Tel. The parking lot is a grid of bruised asphalt, clean enough for business travelers, anonymous enough for secrets. I cut my lights a second after his go dark and coast into a space 2 rows back. The summer air in Ohio is thick, buzzing with insects and the distant hiss of freeway tires. Through my windshield, I watch him step out, check his phone, smooth his collar. He doesn't look around. Why would he? He believes I'm home, sleeping next to the shape he left in the bed. A white SUV glides in from the street and parks 2 spots over from his car. Sarah climbs out, hair tucked under a baseball cap, oversized hoodie swallowing her shoulders. The hood can't hide the angle of her chin or the quick scan of the doorways. She's on the phone. The blue glow turns her cheek cold. She doesn't wave, doesn't call out. She just walks toward the lobby at the exact same pace Mark does, as if a string has been tied between them. I lift my phone, thumb on the camera, breath held. The first shot catches them in the same frame, 10 feet apart, both reaching for the front doors. The second shot lands as Mark tilts his head toward her without turning his body. A private gesture meant to look like nothing. The third is the one that makes my stomach clench. His hand, gentle and practiced, at the small of her back as they step inside together. The lobby is all varnished veneer and potted palms, too bright after the parking lot. From where I sit, I can see the reflection of the front desk in the glass. I switch to video, zoom in, steady my elbows against the steering wheel. The clerk slides a folio across the counter. Sarah takes it. Mark nods. Their mouths move and their eyes don't. A plastic key card flashes in Sarah's hand. Another in his. I tap capture, tap again. Proof isn't a flood. It's a bead of water that you nudge along a pane of glass until it gathers weight. I take photos of the hotel sign with the broken O, the clock above the desk reading 9:32, the 2 of them queued at the elevator, still pretending they aren't together, still failing to leave any air between them. When the elevator doors open, they step in without hesitation. Mark turns half a degree to shield her as she laughs at something he says. The doors close on that laugh. I keep filming until I'm watching only my own reflection, a pale oval and the bright eye of my phone. The urge to scream is a rogue wave that almost drags me under. I grip the phone harder, feel the tiny rub of the case seam against my palm, and force my breath back into my ribs. I don't need a scene. I need a record. I open my photos, check the images, crisp, time-stamped, location tagged. I hit the share icon and send them to my cloud, to my sister's email, to a hidden folder I created when the first lie fell out of Mark's mouth. If he grabs my phone, if my battery dies, if I drop this in the gutter, what I saw won't disappear. A couple in scrubs crosses the lot, trading end-of-shift stories, glancing once at me and looking away. Somewhere, a television plays a game show laugh track. Somewhere, a vending machine thunks out a coil of stale chips. I am one woman in a car, invisible until I am not. The elevator hum returns, then dings. For a split second, I think they're coming back down, a panicked replay, a change of heart. But it's a housekeeping cart and a bored attendant, and the doors slide shut again. I lower the phone and let my head rest against the seat. My hands tingle. My jaw aches from how tightly I've been holding it shut. Through the glass of the lobby, I can see the clerk look toward the parking lot, then back to his screen. No one notices the woman counting her breaths. Another minute, 2. I debate leaving. I debate storming in. I choose neither. I choose to stay until the part of me that doubted has no voice left. I raise the phone one more time, framing the doors, the desk, The elevator. The camera doesn't blink. It just sees. Movement catches at the corner of my eye, Mark's reflection in the glass turning, not toward the elevator, but toward the parking lot. He shifts as if a sudden chill has crossed his skin, as if some animal sense has whispered he is not alone. His head angles, searching. Slowly, very slowly, he turns his face toward the darkness where I sit. I sink lower in the seat, pulse roiling, the shutter still open, the evidence still warm in my hand. The morning light in Ohio always has a way of exposing things you'd rather keep hidden. It streams across Margaret's kitchen, glinting off the polished oak table, the ceramic rooster clock above the stove, and the stack of clean mugs lined up for coffee. I sit at the end of the table, my hands folded, pretending to be absorbed in the swirl of steam from my cup. But my attention sharpens when Sarah breezes in, hair glossy, smile wide, as if last night never happened. She sets her purse on the counter with an easy thud and leans in to kiss Margaret's cheek. "Morning," she chirps, voice warm, almost rehearsed. Margaret smiles back, delighted to have her daughter-in-law in the kitchen, oblivious to the tension crackling between us. David follows a moment later, heavy footsteps, stretching his arms. He looks tired. But his grin is broad when he sees Sarah already pouring coffee. I watch her fingers. Last night, those same hands accepted a hotel keycard next to Mark's. Today, they move effortlessly across sugar packets and stir sticks, like a practiced homemaker. She laughs at something David says, leaning in just enough, the performance of a loyal wife. I clear my throat softly. "I drove past the New Hampton Inn yesterday," I say, casually dropping the words into the air like coins into a fountain. Funny how busy it looked for a weeknight. Sarah's stirring spoon stills for a heartbeat. The pause is so quick Margaret doesn't catch it, but I do. Sarah glances up, her smile unwavering but her eyes flickering, calculating. She sets the spoon down. Hotels are always busy. Salespeople, truckers, you know. She replies smoothly, too smoothly. I sip my coffee, forcing a calmness I don't feel. "True," I say. "Still, it's not often you run into someone you know in a place like that." Her eyes meet mine for the briefest moment, dark and sharp, before she lowers them to her cup. There's the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth, irritation masked as amusement. Margaret hums, unaware, slicing banana bread and offering pieces on a plate. The kitchen smells like cinnamon and butter, but underneath it my stomach knots. I think of the photos stored safely in my cloud, of Mark's hand on her back. My phone in my pocket feels heavier than it should. Sarah takes a slow bite of bread, then places the slice back down, her gaze locked on mine now. "You know," she says, voice dripping with deliberate sweetness. "Sometimes a good woman knows when not to ask questions. Curiosity can ruin families." Margaret frowns slightly, distracted. David doesn't notice, busy buttering his bread. But I hear every syllable, the warning buried inside. It is not subtle. It is a line drawn across the table daring me to step over it. I set my mug down with care, my hand steady though my pulse pounds. "Interesting advice," I murmur, offering the faintest smile. Sarah holds my gaze another beat, then tilts her head and laughs, as if she has told a harmless joke. Margaret joins in, unaware, filling plates with more bread. For a moment, I feel isolated, as if the walls of this kitchen belong to Sarah, not to me. But then David speaks, almost absent-mindedly, with no idea of the knife he is twisting. "Sarah's always running off in the evenings," he says with a chuckle, shaking his head. "Tells me she's meeting a friend for drinks or errands. I don't know how she keeps the energy." The words hang in the air. My spine stiffens. Margaret chuckles, dismissing it, but Sarah's smile falters. She darts a quick glance at David, then at me. And I see the first real crack in her facade. I fold my napkins slowly, letting silence stretch just long enough for her to feel it. Inside me, something steals. Last night I had photos. Today, without even trying, I've been handed a witness. I breathe in the cinnamon air, my face calm, my heart racing. This family breakfast has given me more than food. It has given me leverage. And Sarah knows it. Mark's office still smelled like cedar oil and printer toner, the kind of sterile calm that tries to pass for order. I stood in the doorway for a full minute, listening for footsteps, for pipes ticking, for anything that might warn me away. Nothing. Just the soft hum of the desktop tower under his desk and the blind leaking a ribbon of Ohio sunlight across the carpet. I sat, pulled his laptop from the charging stand, and lifted the lid. The screen woke to a password prompt, and my hands moved before fear could stop them. Anniversary date. A chime. I was in. His inbox opened like a door I had no right to touch. Search bar, blinking cursor. I typed Sarah's first name and hit enter. A crowd of messages surfaced, recipes, family plans, holiday photos, harmless. I narrowed the search. Contract, agreement, transfer. The harmless ones fell away until a subject line hung there with the kind of weight that can split a life. Investment contract, Larkspur. I clicked. The email was from Mark to Sarah, dated 3 weeks ago, time-stamped at 11:47 p.m., the same night he'd claimed a late client meeting. The body was short, businesslike on the surface. Per our discussion, attaching the agreement as requested. The structure keeps distributions discreet. Please confirm receipt. 2 attachments glowed beneath the text. Larkspur Kosh Investment, Agreement.pdf, and Wire, Kosh Confirm, ZO422, PNG. My mouth went dry. I opened the PDF first. An LLC name I didn't recognize, a registered address in a neighboring town. Capital contribution, $85,000. Manager, Sarah, last name omitted. Member, M. Brooks Consulting. A clause circled in the margin in Mark's neat blue annotation. Profit distributions at manager's discretion. Another note, even smaller. Keeps everything clean. Clean. That word rang in my ears like a taunt. I thought of the small white envelope I'd watched slide from Mark's hand to Sarah's under the table, the way her knuckles had brushed his. A memory that had felt slippery and subjective suddenly rooted itself in ink and signatures. This wasn't a one-time mistake tucked away in a hotel corridor. This was architecture. I clicked the wire confirmation, a cropped screenshot of a bank portal. The last 4 digits matched Mark's business account. Amount sent, $40,500 initial, a second scheduled transfer for the same at month's end. Beneficiary, Larkspur LLC, memo line, seed capital. The image was edited to hide extraneous details, but not enough. In a corner, a thumbnail preview of his desktop betrayed a folder labeled Scans S. It didn't take a detective to guess what S stood for. My heart pounded at my ribs, demanding I close the laptop and pretend none of this existed. I didn't. I moved fast. I dragged the email and both attachments into a fresh folder and hit print to PDF, preserving metadata, timestamps, subject, headers, everything. I saved the bundle to the desktop, then to a cloud drive Mark never used, then to a portable drive I kept on my keychain for wedding files and recipes, and now, apparently, for survival. Redundancy was my new religion. A thought rose, cold and clean. He was paying her. Not for services or product, not really. He was building a tunnel through which attention, loyalty, and money could flow without a trace of scandal. A straight line from our joint life to her private sphere. Calling it investment didn't change the shape. It only gave it a suit. I scrolled lower. There were earlier messages, draft language, links to a template site, A note from Sarah. Make sure it won't trigger any weird questions if someone looks. Mark's response. It's layered. Distributions look like returns. Relax. Then a final line, tossed in as if it were an afterthought but pulsing with intimacy. We deserve something of our own. The words were small, and they burned. I leaned back, eyes closed for a second, letting the weight settle evenly so it wouldn't crush me all at once. The room sharpened when I opened them again. The framed diploma on the wall, the paperweight shaped like a lighthouse, the tidy inbox stack he was proud of. I wasn't here to break things. I was here to build a record. I exported the PDF agreement again with markups visible, then without, capturing both versions. I took photos of the screen with my phone, wide shots, close-ups, so that if anyone ever claimed these files were altered, I would have the raw glow of pixels under glass to answer back. I forwarded the email thread to an account Mark didn't know I owned. Subject line changed to nothing more than a period. Then I created a text file and typed the sequence of what I had done, the time, the file names, where I had saved them. If I was going to fight, I would fight tidy. Only then did I allow myself to feel it. The nausea, the tremble under my skin, the grief that someone I loved had curated this cold machinery with the same care he used to plan our anniversaries. Money is a language. He had chosen to speak to her in it. I closed the laptop halfway, listening. The house was still. The clock down the hall clicked each second forward like a metronome measuring out a new tempo. I forced air in and out of my lungs and stood to check the window, the yard, the drive. That's when I heard it. The grind of tires over our gravel, the low, familiar rumble that said his truck had turned off the main road and into the long mouth of our driveway. A beat later, the muted chirp of a key fob, the slam of a door, footsteps on the walk. I snapped the laptop shut, slid it back into its place on the stand, and palmed the key drive so tight it left a crescent in my skin. Downstairs, the front door latch clicked, then turned. The Brooks living room was dressed for the weekend like it was company. Polished wood floors gleaming, fresh flowers in Margaret's favorite vase on the mantel, the old piano lid raised as if ready to host a song. But no one was humming. The extended family had gathered at Margaret's invitation. Siblings, cousins, aunts. Plates of finger food sat untouched, pitchers of sweet tea sweating onto the sideboard. What should have been an ordinary Saturday reunion carried a strange weight, like everyone had been warned without words to expect something decisive. Mark stood near the bay window, shoulders squared as if he were presenting at a boardroom table instead of his mother's parlor. Sarah perched beside him in a silk blouse too deliberate for casual family time. Their stance together was already a statement. My skin prickled. Since everyone's here, Mark began, voice projecting, Sarah and I want to share some good news. We're officially launching a company together. A real opportunity, transparent, clean investment, no secrets. The word clean fell with a thud in my chest. Behind me, a cousin shifted uncomfortably. David leaned forward in his chair, puzzled but still willing to smile, still believing this was his wife and his brother standing shoulder to shoulder in simple partnership. I rose slowly. My palms were damp, but I steadied my voice. Transparent? Then let's all take a closer look. I lifted my phone, tapped the screen, and with one push the television flickered to life. The photo I had taken outside the hotel bled onto the screen. Mark and Sarah side by side, his hand brushing her arm, their bodies angled too close for business. Gasps snapped the air in two. Before anyone could protest, the next image loaded. The investment email with its neat attachments, the PDF contract, Mark's notes in the margin, then the screenshot of the wire transfer, his initials typed in the memo line like a careless fingerprint. Voices erupted, aunts whispering, cousins standing, the younger ones confused, the older ones shaking their heads. David's face blanched, then flushed red, his jaw slack as his gaze darted between his brother and his wife. Margaret pressed a hand to her mouth, her other trembling against the armrest of her chair. Mark tried to recover, raising his hands like a conductor over chaos. "This isn't what it looks like," he said, voice cracking. "It's business. Purely business." But the room wasn't buying it. "At a hotel?" someone blurted. "Money hidden as contracts?" another muttered. David finally found his voice, loud enough to slice through the din. "You've been lying to me, both of you." The tremor in his words shook me more than any accusation. I stood still, heart pounding but chin lifted, my evidence glowing on the screen like armor. For a second, silence held. Then Sarah straightened, smoothing the silk of her blouse, her composure chilling. She turned to me with a half-smile that didn't touch her eyes. "You think this is everything?" she said, voice low but cutting. "Amanda, you haven't seen it all yet." The room exhaled in disbelief. But I froze, because her tone wasn't defensive. It was a promise. And in that moment the chill that swept me wasn't from exposure, but from the certainty that she was holding something more, something yet to be unleashed. The community hall smelled like lemon cleaner and old basketballs. Folding chairs lined up in rows, the Brooks name taped to the front table as if this were any other family update. It wasn't. Sarah walked in with a neat manila folder hugged to her chest, Mark at her shoulder. She didn't wait for greetings. She stepped to the microphone like she owned the room. "I have a document everyone needs to see," she said, sliding a paper from the folder. "A promissory note. Amanda owes $75,000, signed by Mark as lender." Gasps fluttered. Margaret's hand went to her pearls. David stood halfway, then sat again as if the floor shifted under him. I felt the first cold stab land under my ribs, the one that whispers you're about to be buried. Then I remembered the way Sarah had smiled yesterday and said I hadn't seen everything. This was the plan B. I took a breath. I was ready. Mr. Ellis, the family's longtime attorney, rose from the second row, palm out. "May I?" Sarah handed the page over with an elegant flick. He scanned it, frowning. "Curious," he murmured. "The notary seal is a photocopy, not an impression. And the witness signature belongs to the lender. That's not how this works." Sarah's lips formed a thin line. "It's a family matter, not a courtroom." "Exactly why we should be clear," I said. My voice didn't shake. I stepped to the projector, cued the first image from a neat folder on the laptop. "Here is my bank activity for the month the note claims funds were disbursed. There is no deposit of $75,000, no cashier's check, nothing." A chorus of whispers. I tapped again. "Here is the wire log from Mark's business account that same week. You'll see a transfer for $75,000, but it doesn't go to me. It goes to a shell company, Northline Creative LLC." I looked up. "Registered to Sarah." David's chair scraped back. "You told me that was a vendor." His voice cracked, disbelief colliding with anger. "You told me?" Sarah lifted her chin. "We were securing a trademark. The family benefits." Mr. Ellis angled the note toward the light. "The loan's reference number is the exact same as that wire. That's not a coincidence. It's a backfill." I moved to the next slide. Also, the note uses 2 different fonts. The disbursement date is typed over faint erasure marks. And the repayment terms reference an account I opened 3 months later. You can't pay from an account that doesn't exist yet. Aunt Carol let out a low, "Oh my." Margaret's knuckles whitened on the edge of the table. Mark shifted, color draining from his face. He started to speak, then coughed out silence. David pushed past him, eyes lasered on Sarah. "Tell them about the blank page." His hand shook, but his words were steady. "Last fall, you handed me a sheet on our kitchen counter, told me it was for a refinance quote. No text, just our letterhead. You said, "Sign here so I can fax it in." 2 weeks later, you found a memo where I supposedly granted you authority to supervise family investments. He laughed without humor. I didn't authorize anything. You used my signature to prop your story. The room recoiled. Someone muttered that this had gone too far. Someone else asked God for patience. Sarah's mask held for precisely 1 beat longer, then slipped. "You were supposed to keep quiet," she hissed at David, the microphone hot enough to catch it. "You always do." Mr. Ellis looked up, voice crisp. For the record, any document created by pasting a signature onto later text is void. Coupled with this note's defects and the mismatched banking trail, we have a pattern of fabrication. If necessary, I will recommend the family refer this to the district attorney. Mark finally found his words, but they sounded small. "I was trying to help Sarah start a business. I thought I could manage the optics." "Manage the optics?" Margaret repeated, stunned. "This is our family." I flipped to the last slide. The phone screenshots, cropped clean. "And here are the texts from Mark asking me to borrow my credit card points to book client travel on the same weekend he and Sarah were at the hotel. Cross-checked by dates and confirmation numbers." I lowered the remote. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. No one moved. You could hear the hum of the exit sign and the tick of the thermostat. Then the sound returned all at once, chairs groaning, sharp inhalations, a cousin's whispered, "Lord." David stepped between me and Sarah, not as a shield, but as a witness. "I believe Amanda," he said, "and I'm ashamed I didn't see it sooner." Sarah laughed, brittle and bright as glass. "You all think you've cornered me because of a few screenshots and a jealous wife's bank app." She swept her gaze across the rows, daring someone to hold it. "But you have no idea what you're up against." "Sarah," Mr. Ellis said evenly, "I strongly advise you to stop talking." She didn't. Her eyes cut to me, glittering with fury. "You will regret this," she said, voice rising. "All of you. You will pay for turning on me." The words ricocheted around the hall. I kept my hands still at my sides. The evidence sat in neat stacks, the timeline lined up like a spine. Whatever she threw next, I would meet it head-on. But as Sarah's shout echoed off the cinderblock walls, I felt the ripple move through the family. The moment when a mask finally breaks, and the truth stands without needing an ally. Sunday morning light poured through Margaret's lace curtains, filling the Brooks house with a fragile kind of peace. The nightmarish storm of accusations and confrontations from the family meeting had finally settled into silence. Mark had packed his things and moved into a friend's apartment. Sarah had disappeared entirely, her phone switched off, her trail gone cold. But the echoes of what had happened clung to every corner of the house, like smoke after a fire. I sat at the long oak table in Margaret's kitchen, my coffee untouched, papers spread neatly in front of me. The room smelled of cinnamon rolls, Margaret's way of comforting a wounded family, though no one felt like eating. David leaned against the doorway, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. He had barely spoken since admitting the truth about Sarah. "This has to stop," I finally said, my voice steady but low. "The lies, the manipulations, the secrets. If we keep letting silence rule, we'll never heal. We need transparency." Margaret lowered herself into the chair across from me, her hands trembling as she folded them together. "Transparency," she repeated softly, almost tasting the word. For so long, secrecy had been the family's default, papering over fractures until they split wide open. I slid the packet of documents across the table. "This is my plan. Full disclosure of assets. Every acre of land, every savings account, every title. We put it on the table. We divide based on fairness, not hidden deals. No more envelopes, no more forged notes, No more backroom contracts. David lifted his head, eyes locking with mine. And you'll handle it? Yes, I said firmly. But only if everyone agrees that trust has to start now. No more family members blindsided. Every decision logged. Every paper signed with witnesses. If I manage it, it will be with rules, not whispers. Margaret's eyes welled up. She reached out and touched the folder as though it were a fragile relic. Your father would have wanted this, she whispered. And God knows, after everything, I want this too. Her voice broke, and I felt something loosen in my chest. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting to betrayal, I was shaping what came next. David pulled out a chair and sat down heavily, resting his palms on the wood. I don't deserve a say after what I let happen. But, Amanda, if you take this on, I'll stand behind you. I'm done letting Sarah and Mark set the course. I nodded. Then it's decided. Margaret pushed a small black box toward me, her jewelry case, but inside was something heavier. When I opened it, the brass key glinted in the light. It was the master key to the family's safe, where the deed to the farmland and the house was kept. Keep it, she said. From today, you're the one who guards this family's ground. I trust you more than anyone. The weight of that key in my hand was heavier than any proof I had unearthed so far. It wasn't just about land or paper. It was about faith, finally being placed where it belonged. I closed my fist around it, promising silently that I wouldn't fail. For a moment, the kitchen was still. Margaret wiped her tears with a napkin. David let out a breath like he'd been holding it for years. I felt the world tilting toward balance again. Then my phone buzzed. A new email notification lit the screen. The subject line read, "One last truth." I frowned, opened it quickly, and scanned the single sentence inside. There is still one secret left. Meet me tonight if you want everything. The cinnamon scent suddenly turned bitter in the back of my throat. Even as the family began to mend, the shadows weren't done with us. And I knew, deep down, that the final revelation might be the one that shattered everything, or set us free for good. The USB arrived in a plain envelope, no return address, just my name in block letters that looked mechanical. Inside was a cheap thumb drive and a scrap of paper. For the truth you wanted. I stared at it until the metal felt hot in my hand. It had to be the sender behind the anonymous email, the one that promised a final secret. I wasn't afraid. I was done guessing. I didn't plug it in at home. I called David, then our family lawyer, Elaine Porter, and asked for an emergency appointment. Elaine's office sat on the 4th floor of a brick building in downtown Columbus. She greeted us without small talk. David paced while I set the drive on her desk like a detonator. Elaine used a computer that wasn't connected to the firm's network. Chain of custody, she said, sliding on nitrile gloves. We make a forensic copy before we open anything. When the directory popped up, there were 2 items. An audio file time-stamped a week before the family meeting, and a PDF labeled debtagreement.pdf. We listened first. Mark's voice came through, casual and cruel. If we move the money through the investment, Margaret won't notice. Sarah answered low. Then we push Amanda out with the debt letter. She'll fold. They laughed. Quiet, private. I didn't realize I was gripping the arm of my chair until wood bit into my palm. David looked like he might be sick. Elaine played the audio again, then ran it through a quick spectral check. No obvious splicing, she said. Ambient continuity. Same room tone. This is almost certainly authentic. David sank into the couch. I thought I knew my wife, he whispered. I thought I knew my brother. Open the PDF, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The document filled the screen. The debt agreement Sarah had flashed in public. The signature looked like mine, until Elaine zoomed in. There, she pointed, Baseline wobble, inconsistent pressure, and look at the M. Hesitation marks. And Mark's signature. Twice. One is a traced overlay. She printed the file, then placed it next to a genuine form I had signed months ago. Side by side, the forgery lost its costume. Elaine leaned back. I can bring in a certified examiner, but I'm comfortable saying this is a forgery. Combined with the audio, it's damning. She took off the gloves and folded her hands. The anger that had kept me upright for weeks cooled into resolve. David rubbed his face. Amanda, I let it happen in front of me. I'm sorry. I touched his shoulder. You told the truth when it counted, I said. Now we finish this. Elaine drafted a memo, listing exhibits, photographs from the hotel, the investment emails, the bank logs, and now the recording and the fake debt letter. The case that had felt like fog became a grid. Names, dates, numbers, a map through the mess. I watched the printer spit out pages and felt an unexpected lightness, the lift that comes when a story finally holds its own weight. We reviewed next steps: cease and desist, a petition to freeze disputed accounts, protective orders for Margaret. Elaine's pen tapped twice, a habit before hard questions. She looked at me, then at David, measuring our readiness to let this go public and permanent. The choice was no longer about pride. It was about safety, precedent, and the cost of silence. My phone buzzed. Another blocked number. Don't do this. I showed it to Elaine. She copied the message with the timestamp and added it to the file. Intimidation rarely ages well in front of a judge, she said. The thumb drive sat between us, ordinary and ruinous. Everything we needed was finally in one place. The floor didn't tilt anymore. I could see what came next, even if I didn't know how it would feel when it landed. Outside the window, traffic hummed and a siren wailed somewhere far off, the city carrying on as if our little war were just weather passing through. Elaine capped her pen and met my eyes. You have the evidence, she said. You've been more than fair. Amanda, do you want to sue? The morning light crept across my desk, golden and steady, as if the house itself wanted to remind me that nights end, storms pass, and drawers close. I slid the last folder inside the oak drawer, the stack thick with everything. From the grainy hotel photos to the bank logs, the forged contract, and finally, the recording that had stripped away all illusions. When the lock clicked, the sound wasn't just metal on metal. It was a boundary set, a full stop at the end of months of chaos. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid someone would come behind me and reopen the wound. Downstairs, Margaret was already at the kitchen table with her coffee, steam curling around her tired face. She looked up at me and, for once, her eyes weren't shadowed by suspicion. You did right, Amanda, she said softly. Your father-in-law would have been proud of how you handled this. There was no grand gesture, no parade of approval, just the kind of quiet respect that matters most in families. David sat beside her, hands folded as if he were afraid to fumble even this moment. His voice cracked when he added, You saved what was left of us. Thank you. I didn't answer immediately. I let the weight of their words settle in the room, mingling with the scent of toast and the faint hum of the refrigerator. I wasn't a heroine. I wasn't vindicated by applause. I was simply someone who refused to let lies decide who I was or what I deserved. I'm not here for revenge, I finally whispered, staring at the sunlight spilling across the floorboards. I only ever wanted the truth. And now, we have it. David reached across the table, tentative, but I met his hand with mine. Margaret smiled, small and tired, but real. No lawyers, no accusations, no shouting matches. Just the three of us, breathing the same air beginning again in the ruins. I felt lighter, as if all those documents in the drawer had absorbed the darkness instead of me. When I returned to my office, I laid my palm flat against the closed drawer. Its surface was warm, touched by the morning sun. It was only wood, hinges, and paper inside, but to me it was a vault of survival, proof that silence hadn't won. I whispered once more, for myself this time, "The truth is enough." And then I walked away, the house quiet, the air steady, the day open before me. I closed the drawer, the stack of documents lying still as if they had never kept me awake at night. The morning light streamed in, revealing a simple truth. Peace only comes when we have the courage to set our boundaries. In life, being filial does not mean bowing unconditionally. Respect and fairness are what keep a family whole. Justice may arrive late, but when it does, it lets us breathe easier and move forward with strength. If this story touched you, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Type 1 if you agree. Type 2 if you think there's something that could be improved.